So here we are on Adobe Illustrator. All right. And everyone open a new document. So I know we walked through this earlier in the week, but I'm going to walk you through it again. This one's going to be called Drawing Tools. You know how Drawing Tools intro, your name maybe, or whatever, as long as you know what it is. I'm going to have you make 4 artboards, and we're actually going to make more once we're into the program. But you're going to do 4 artboards. Spacing doesn't really matter. The size is going to be letters so that they can be printed off if we want. Again, that's 8.5 by 11 inches. If you don't see this, if it says something like PT or PX, you can go to your units and change it to inches. We don't need bleed. Our color mode, so if your advanced is to the side, you want to open your advanced to make sure that your color mode is CMYK. Got it? All right, and then press OK. So here we are. We have 4 artboards, which again I like to think of as 4 pieces of paper. I'm going to talk about a few shortcuts. I'll move this. I'm going to talk about a few shortcuts. So there's a lot of toggling in between tools on this program. And so shortcuts are going to make your life a lot easier. If you press Command and plus, you're going to be able to zoom in. If you press Command and minus, you can zoom out. So that's one I use a lot. Another one I use a lot is if you press the space bar while you're working with any tool, it's going to turn your tool into, you press and hold it, it's going to turn it into this white glove. And the white glove allows you to move your screen around. So if you're zoomed way in on something and you want to see a different part of it, you can just press the space bar and move it around rather than going to click on the white glove tool. So I'll repeat that a few times, but the space bar and the command plus and minus are good ones for navigating around your screen once you have a lot of artboards going, a lot of information. Okay, so we are going to learn a little bit about our tools. These tools at the top, so you can see there's these little hairlines that divide the tools that you're using. The first hairline separates our selection tools, which you learned about in your Introduction to Illustrator videos. So we have our regular selection tool and then the direct selection tool, which allows you to be a little bit more specific. And we'll use those more once you're using the pen tool, but for now, you just need to know. So we're going to go down to the next, underneath the next hairline. The pen tool is the one that drives everybody crazy. We aren't going to learn that today. It's really intense. It's going to take you a couple days to learn it, or maybe a whole lifetime. But we're going to move past those to some simpler drawing tools. But these 2 hairlines separate our drawing tools, so this area is what we're going to focus on today. So we are going to, this little thing, yours probably doesn't look like this. It probably looks like the line segment. So if you, the little arrow down here in the corner shows us that there are more tools in a drop-down menu. If you hold it, it will be the drop-down menu, and then if you pull over to the side where this arrow is, it will pull out the menu so that you have another little menu there for you. I'm saying menu a lot. While you are experimenting, if you find something that you really like, if you're working with a tool and you're excited about it and you're like, oh, I want to remember how to do that. This T is our text tool. So this is a really easy way of taking notes on your thing. So say you used a spiral and a line segment and you loved it, you could just click with that text tool and type in whatever you want. And it will leave you a little note. That's not required, it's just if you want it. So we'll start with the line tool. Line segment tool is pretty easy. It's a click and, so you're going to click and drag to make a line segment. It will make it in the direction. It starts where you click and it ends where you drag it to and release. Right now, mine aren't showing up. Does anyone know why that is? What? Yeah, well, actually, there's nothing. So down here, remember, you guys might hopefully learned about the stroke and fill down here. So right now, I have no fill and no stroke because there's a red line through both of these. So we want to give us I want to get a stroke here. And I can have it really light. The stroke weight is up here at the top. So I can have it really light at one point or even smaller. Or I can make it thicker, making it heavier, 16 point. But if you notice that things aren't showing up, you want to check down here and make sure that you have a stroke and a fill. It doesn't matter if I have a fill right now because the line segments aren't going to fill in. They're just a segment. So try creating a couple lines. If you just click and don't drag, a dialog box comes up. So I'll say dialog box a lot. A dialog box is something that tells you what the computer is going to create, and it lets you specify some of the stuff in there. So if I were to just click, the line segment that's going to be created is an echo of the last one I made. So it's going to be 3.99 inches. Wow, I got really close to 4. 3.99 inches, and it will be at a 192.88 degree tilt. That's very intense information. You probably are never going to have to use the dialog box to give an exact. You'll probably just eyeball it and drag the line tools as you want them. But if you wanted that, you can do that. Any questions on the line segment tool? All right, so that's our simplest tool. You can use the line segment tool to trace around things. But it's like our easiest drawing tool. Then we have an arc tool. So the arc tool is another drag, and where you start clicking and then dragging, it's going to start creating an arc. And depending on the angle in which you drag it, the arc is going to look different. So I just created that arc. I sort of don't like that arc. It's not speaking to me. So once I have that arc, if I don't like it, I can use the direct select tool and I can change my arc. I can grab the ends, my anchor points, and change the way this arc looks. When you have your direct select tool, you want to make sure you're over your anchors, and it will allow you to move it around. But I want everyone to create a couple arcs. You can change the line weight. Maybe try to create like a, I'm going to have everyone try to create like a sort of three-dimensional looking thing. With the line segment and arcs. Doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but try to create something that looks like a curved wall. So it'll be two parallel-ish curves, and then you can attach line segments. Oops. It doesn't exactly look 3D now, does it? But I made a shape. Another shortcut you'll use a lot, or I use all the time, is Command Z. Command Z undoes. And the cool thing about Illustrator, unlike with other Adobe programs, is you can undo infinity since you opened the program. So I could press Command Z until I had completely blank artboards. So those two tools are extremely basic. Oh, look, I'm making that line skinnier. But just by changing the line weight, I mean, I'm not in love with this artboard right now, but I have, just by changing those 3 line weights, I now have something that actually looks a little bit interesting, that artboard, if I printed it off. It's not like something I'm going to sell for $1 million. But just by changing things a little bit, you can make, you can start to make interesting images just with these 2 really simple tools. The next tool is a little bit more fun. It is our spiral tool. Whenever you fill up an artboard, feel free to move on to a next one. So if I like stay on the same artboard, you're welcome to try a new one. But a spiral, you can sort of, it's another click and drag. So it will come out from where you start dragging. But the spiral is a little bit more fun to mess with in the dialog box. So here's just a regular spiral that comes out. But if you click and don't drag, you have a few things you can mess with. You can change the direction in which it spirals. You can change how many segments, so how tight it gets, how wide it gets, and the rate at which it decays. So I don't exactly know how to describe the decay rate, except for just to show you. I'm changing this one to, I'll make the radius like 6 inches. Decay 95, and give it like a lot of segments, 31 segments. Woo! And there's our spiral. You can resize your spirals. So this one, the 6 point is a little too much of a stroke weight because I can't really see when it gets detailed. So I'm going to make it only 1 point. When you resize things, so we have all these boxes on the edges that allow you to resize. If you hold the shift key when you're resizing, it's going to keep the same proportions. So right now I'm holding the shift key and it's keeping that sort of square proportion of the spiral. If I were not to hold the shift key, like I just let go of it, if I were not to hold the shift key, I could make this tall and skinny, I could make it short and fat, so it won't maintain the proportions. So play around with the spiral a little bit, maybe make a couple spirals, play with the decay rate. What'd you say? And then you can even take your direct select tool once you have your spiral, and like I'm sort of messing with the inner part of my spiral. I'm just taking each anchor. So there was 31 segments. So all of these little things are all anchors. So you can start making it like a weird spiral that's not perfect. Ooh. You can mess with all the anchor points in your direct select tool. So now this is a crazy person spiral. Not that crazy, but a little crazy. So right now I'm sort of picturing, like, as I'm making this a crazy spiral, I'm a little bit picturing like making a logo for a wood company, because to me this looks like a slice of wood a little bit. But just with this really simple tool, I'm now able to make something pretty interesting that looks pretty clean and professional. And I've just messed with it a little bit, and it's now totally original.